So I had this painting that I had started a couple years ago, actually, and it had gotten damaged on the bottom. So I had cut the bottom off, sanded it down, and I'm just using that canvas for this particular painting. I had purchased these particular roses from Grace Rose Farm. They are the Catalina variety. And I am just so impressed how long they have lasted. Probably a good couple weeks to be able to paint from. I've done several paintings from them. My roses aren't quite blooming yet, so I need a few more weeks before I can paint from my roses. But what I'm doing here now is just kind of blocking in everything that I'm seeing in kind of a medium to dark value right now, and I do this really quickly as I begin to paint. Right now I'm probably using phthalo green with some transparent oxide red, some cadmium yellow in there to lighten that green, and I see a massive green, so I'm putting in a green shape. I'm not painting things right now. I'm just painting shapes, and more abstractly. These are just like abouts, and so, just kind of massing in the shadow of that little blue and white vase. And I'm not so much concerned about what color am I using right now. I'm more concerned about what, value I'm using, what intensity I'm using, what temperature I'm using. So, I know as long as I get the value fairly close, and the intensity fairly close, whatever color it is can be easily manipulated if I need to make changes. And I am having a lot of fun with these cast shadows in the background that go off to the right of my paintings right now. So I've been doing a lot of that lately. Just picking up some probably raw umber and some transparent oxide red for that foreground color. But you can see how loosely I am just kind of blocking everything in right now. And just not worrying about making sure every single shape is drawn correctly. So the background, I'm using white, a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of viridian, maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson. I'm not going to paint it quite as cool as you see in the setup off there to the left. Um, I didn't like it quite that cold. I wanted a little bit more warmer. I tend to lean towards the warm side of the color wheel. Um, I'm using the Q-tip here just to kind of wipe out some of where the strongest lights are, but I'm realizing because of that painting underneath it, that's not really working so good. So now I'm just taking a bristle brush and grabbing kind of the local color of the light. And I'm using white, cadmium yellow pale, and I think a tiny bit of cad orange just to give this really soft, creamy yellow color. And you can see I'm really just trying to simplify the light and shadow patterns right now. I'm not into painting petal by petal. I'm painting light shape by light shape, dark shape by dark shape. And so I kind of go back and forth between the light shape and the dark shape just to kind of correct it. And I'm squinting a lot right now in trying just to see these simplified light and shadow patterns. I think a lot of times students get a little bit too bogged down in the detail too soon when they're painting, when we just really need to simplify in the beginning stages of these simple light and shadow patterns. That's really what the secret is to simplify. So I'm also here trying to start to develop a little bit of temperature shift within those roses. You can see a little bit more greener colors, more yellow colors, because that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing some cooler tones, which is where I pick up the green, the greener mix. And these pears, I'm absolutely loving the pears in this setup because they just uh, they they duplicate the color of the roses, and especially that one rose that's close to the vase. That color as it's ripening of that particular pear is so similar to the interior of the rose. I just thought that was just really, really beautiful. So just really trying to grab the simple color, kind of the local color of the light, local color of the shadow. Painting is like a puzzle to me. There's all these little pieces, a little piece here, a little piece there, until gradually the whole painting comes into completion. I'm not one that can just take one element and paint it start to finish and then move to the other element. I jump around quite a bit. So here I'm putting in the highlight, and I like to create what I call the aura around the highlight by using, white, and I think I used a little bit of Viridian for that cooler light that you see around the highlight. So here again, I'm just kind of checking the drawing and making sure everything's kind of about where it needs to be. I do use my finger a lot to smush things out and to kind of soften edges. So with that vase, I just love this large green vase. I can't remember where I bought it, but I just absolutely love this green vase. It's a beautiful color. I'm using probably phthalo green with a little bit of transparent earth red in it to get those really dark greens. Same with the color, those dark of the greens within the rose and lilac leaves. Sometimes I add a little bit of alizarin crimson to change the temperature a little bit, to change the color of the leaves or the darks of the greens. So I am, you know, again, seeing that some of those back roses, the outer petals are a little less saturated. They're a little more of a yellow green, where the those front roses are a little more, creamy yellow. So again, just trying to change the temperature. So here I am. I'm kind of massing in a shadowy color of the lilacs, and it's just kind of a neutral, nice, warm gray to start off with. So now I'm starting to really kind of work more on the roses and define them and get a little bit more suggestions, of individual petals. um, when I paint the roses, I'm really trying again to simplify. I'm not painting a photorealism version of those roses. I like to say I'm painting a poem and not a novel. So I squint a lot. And if I see separations of petals when I squint, I put them in. But when I squint, if two or three petals kind of converge into one shape, then they get painted as one shape. This way, we leave room for the viewer to kind of fill in the blanks and visualize the rose in their own mind instead of telling the story as like it's an encyclopedia with too many words. I'm using a flat brush here. It's probably a size 14. I use the Sable Tech 95510 series. If you are not familiar with my work or haven't seen the Inspired to Paint online course that we have, I strongly encourage you to investigate that. I have well over 100 instructional videos where I go through the whole process, start to finish, in real time, along with palette shots. With this particular video, I'm not showing you the palette shot, but with the Inspired to Paint full-length lessons and concept lessons, you get palette shots, and you also get the reference images to download so you can paint along with me. I also do group critiques. We have business tips, um, evenings on the patio, all kinds of fun things as an artist to help you on your journey of becoming a better painter. Again, just kind of like stroke by stroke. You notice how I only do one or two strokes and then I stop and I look. I do another stroke and I stop and I look. Sometimes I see students where, they'll look at the setup and then they're on their painting for, 10 or 15 minutes. But, my memory's not that good. So I take a few strokes and I look back at the setup. I take a few strokes and I stop and I look at the setup again. So it's a constant going back and forth between painting and looking at what you're painting and realizing that you're just painting shapes. You've got to forget that it's a leaf or a rose or a pear or a building or a bird or a tree. You have to just see things as shapes. And that's when you are painting on the right side of the brain. When you're painting, or like right now I'm working on the leaves, if I'm actually thinking leaves as I'm paint, then I start to develop, what we kind of visualize what a leaf looks like, kind of the kindergarten version of a leaf, or a tree. So you have to stop and just think about everything is just a shape, organic, abstract, geometric shape. So here I'm going to start building up some of the lilacs, and I'm using a bristle brush, a smaller bristle brush, and I'm letting the paint kind of just dance across the surface as I'm starting to build up suggestions of petals. I'm using probably titanium white with a little bit of cad lemon on the brush just to kind of clean up the white so it's not quite so stark. So here I'm, painting more leaves on top of the uh, lilacs to give a little bit more dimensionality in the work. And one thing I don't want is all the flowers in front and all the leaves in the back. It's important when you're doing a vase of flowers that, you do have some leaves that come over flowers. That feels more organic, more natural. This video, as I'm doing, is sped up 300%. So I painted the entire time I painted on this was an hour and a half, and I've sped it up so it's down to a 28 minute video for you, so it's not too tedious. But this is 3 times speed. I do paint pretty fast in this beginning stage. This is still kind of considered, my first stage, my alla prima stage, where I'm just trying to get um, all these simplified forms in. So I'm painting the vase. You can see there, when light passes through something, it warms up and it intensifies, and you can see that beautiful yellowy green on the lower right hand side of the vase, as I'm painting it. Right now I'm using a fan brush to kind of knock down some ridges of paint that I'm not sure I like. I like to have quiet passages of paint and more textural passages of paint. So when everything goes into shadow, I'm going to make sure that's a quiet passage. And if something's in light and I want to draw attention, I'm going to have more texture. So I like to say I let my shadows be a whisper and I let my lights do the talking. You can see there, right there, I kind of connected the little bowl with the vase. A lot. I'm always looking for places where I can connect things, a light to a light, a dark to a dark, and that's what helps move your eye throughout the painting. Going back to the pears, adding a little bit more detail. I'm painting on, well, the size of the canvas is a 16 by 18, or is that right? It was an 1824. Oh, so now it's an 1820 because I cut off 4 inches. And it's the C15 oil prime linen that I'm painting on. I have on my Inspired to Paint site, if you go to Inspired to Paint and click on About Elizabeth Robbins, you can see a complete supply list, a video on all of my supplies, the paints and brushes that I use, how I set up the still life station, and I have lots of other free videos on the Inspired to Paint site. So back to some background. I'm not a palette knife mixer. I don't do that a lot, so I'm constantly mixing the background color on my palette. And if the color changes a little bit, I'm okay with that. I think that's really interesting. So you can see little tiny color changes within those background, which I think makes some beautiful movement. You do have to paint fairly fast when you're painting from live flowers, but I was really quite impressed with these particular flowers from Grace Rose Farm on, how well um, they lasted. So I would highly recommend Grace Rose Farm. You can find them on Instagram. You can see that beautiful cast shadow shape there on the right-hand side. Putting in some cast shadows so everything sits on the table. Putting a little bit more depth in those focal point roses um, to draw your eye more to that area. After I get this bottom rose done, I realize I don't like it quite so open. So I change it here towards the end of the painting. I didn't put that particular rose in water, so when you see the actual setup again, you can see that the rose actually kind of wilted a little bit. So coming back to the leaves, getting a little bit more darks in there to separate a few of the leaves. All I need to do is just, paint a few leaves that are very leaf-like, and the rest of the greenery can be these abstract shapes, and your brain just figures out that there's leaves. We don't have to paint every single leaf um, to make it look like a leaf because that's not how it looks in life. You'll have shapes that don't recognize the leaf at all, depending on how they're twisted or turned or something's on top. So again, it goes back to just shapes. So it's really important, on this cast shadow shape that I make it an interesting shape and I don't repeat uh, shapes too often. Mm. Okay, I'm coming back. I'm deciding to, go a little bit lighter on the background. And this is where I can carve in certain areas. There's a little pink on my brush there. I actually kind of like that. That was by accident, but I actually kind of really like that quite a bit, the pinks with all the greens. So you can see this is where, I take the background, I'll just correct the leaf shape a little bit. I'm realizing I had those shapes looking too similar, so I changed them again. More detail on the lilacs, picking up quite a bit of paint, so there's quite a bit of texture on those front lilac petals. I do use my finger a lot to blow a shape out or just kind of blend a little bit, soften an edge. So lightening the foreground just a little bit. I do love all the little petals on the foreground. I do that a lot. To me, it resembles life. Life is kind of messy. It's not perfect. You can see on the table how that one rose on the tabletop has started to wilt a little bit. Um, okay, so I'm coming back to the focal point roses and giving them a little bit more detail, a little bit more texture in the light area. I'm looking at shapes, again, very interesting shapes. There's also a lot of angles in roses that a lot of people don't realize. They'll, do this really circular motion when it comes to petals, but if you really study the rose shape, you'll see a lot of angles. Okay, so here's where I'm realizing, I don't like that rose open. I think it will look better. It'll be a little bit quieter if it's not quite so open and won't compete with those focal point roses. So I'm changing this particular rose, making it feel like it's not quite as opened. I use petals on the ground like that to help draw your eye throughout a painting. Leaves, they help to be directional tools, so I use that to my advantage to help orchestrate your eye throughout the painting. If you see that teal green cloth over to the side, I use that as reflected color. But, here I am building up that light a little bit more on the vase to make it feel a little bit more translucent. And there you can see that turquoise color I'm putting in there as reflected color. I love that. You'll see that a lot in my paintings. I'm using a fan brush now to kind of quiet things down in the vase, really punching up that highlight with the strong, just pure white. I'm softening that light that passes through. I want it to feel like it's light passing through, but I don't want it to be as textural as the highlight. So I'm putting on the blue here from the little bowl. And I hesitated about adding the blue because it was adding an additional color because I'm mainly using greens and yellows. Um, but I come back and I realize, oh, I don't like that much blue. So I'm taking the fan brush, softening the edges. And I'm coming back and I will take out some of the blue. I just realized I wanted that blue a little bit quieter, just not so much. So going over the vase again and diminishing the blue detailing. That feels better to me. So at the end, you can see I added a rose on the lower right because I felt a little empty over there. So I added another little rose, and there's the painting at the end of an hour and a half. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me at elizabeth@inspiredtopaint.com or robinsfineart@icloud.com. So I hope that inspires you to paint. Thanks for watching.